All right. Oh, that's new. All right. I'd like to call the May 26th full board meeting of Macomb County Community Mental Health to order. And with that, we'll start with the roll call. Sandy, please call the roll.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Megan?
Megan Burke, present, reporting from, attending remotely from Chesterfield Township, Macomb County, Michigan.
Linda?
Linda Bush, attending remotely from Harrison Township in Macomb County, Michigan.
Donna?
Donna Kanjemi, attending remotely from Sterling Heights, Michigan in Macomb County.
Nick?
Nick Matero, attending remotely from Roseville, Macomb County, Michigan.
Ryan?
Ryan Fantuzzi, appearing remotely, the Village of Romeo, Bruce Township, Macomb County, Michigan.
Dana?
Good evening, everybody. Dana Freers, attending remotely from Roseville, Macomb County, Michigan. I'm watching the kids' baseball game, so I'm going to keep my video off, but I'm here and paying attention.
Good.
Mark?
Mark Kilgore, reporting, attending remotely from East Point, Macomb County, Michigan.
Phil?
Phil Kraft, attending remotely from Chesterfield Township, Macomb County, Michigan.
Dr. O'Connell?
Chris O'Connell, attending remotely from Washington Township, Macomb County, Michigan.
Lori?
Lori Phillips, attending remotely from Macomb, Michigan, Macomb County, Michigan.
Selena?
Selena Schmidt, attending remotely from Shelby Township in Macomb County, Michigan.
And Antoinette?
Antoinette Wallace, attending remotely from Macomb in Macomb County, Michigan. And I am at a track meet. I am paying attention, but my camera will probably be going on and off depending on all the people around me. But I'm here and I'm alert.
And that is the list, Phil.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, board members. I wish I were at a hockey game right now. Please stand for the pledge. Linda, please lead us.
I pledge the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I was kind of waiting for my group to catch on, but.
You did a great job, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Next is the reading of the mission statement. Selena, could you please read our mission statement?
Yes. Macomb County Community Mental Health, guided by the values, strengths, and informed choices of the people we serve, provides quality services which promote recovery, community participation, self-sufficiency, and independence.
Thank you, Selena. Next item is item 3, adoption of the agenda. I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Burke.
Support Freers.
Support.
Motion from Megan, support from Dana. Any questions or comments on the agenda?
I noticed the names in the Community Mental Health Board have not been changed yet.
On the letterhead?
Yes.
I was speaking to Sandy about that. That's a apparently Board of Commissioners problem, so I will be working on that. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Any other board members' comments on the agenda? All right, seeing and hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? The agenda is adopted. Next item is hearing of the public. Anybody from the public wishing to speak on any item that's on the agenda, you have 5 minutes. Please give us your name and address. And you can make sure you unmute yourself. Like Dave said earlier, raise your hand, just speak up. Again, you have 5 minutes on any item on today's agenda. Would anybody like to participate in the hearing of the public? Hearing of the public going twice.
Sorry, this
Yes.
is Leanna from Crawl Walk Jump Run Therapy Clinic. We are at 42804 Garfield Road, Clinton Township. I have my manager, Kathleen Lewandowski, on the call as well, who will be presenting about our clinic to the team today.
Perfect. Thank you. Perfect. Thank
Can Leanna share her screen?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me. This real quick. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. Here we go.
All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to talk at this board meeting. Christina Mazzella had emailed all the providers to see if at board meetings we wanted to speak about our program so that you guys kind of got an understanding of, you know, what's in your network. So thank you so much for inviting us. We really appreciate it. So I'm Kathleen Lewandowski. I'm the COO of Crawl Walk Therapy, and Leanna is my marketing manager. So she helps me with this community outreach. If you want to go to the next slide, Leanna. So we have been partners with Macomb County for over 13 years, and we just wanted to really thank you. During the pandemic, we felt extremely supported. We were getting regular emails and communications, and I really feel like it even further strengthened our bond. So I just want to tell everyone that contributed to that, thank you. You know, it helped us to be more confident and then to relay that confidence to our patients. So we really, really appreciate it and just wanted to give you a big thank you. Do you have the next slide, Lena?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've been around since 2006. So we're super excited. We're celebrating our 15-year anniversary this year. It's nice to have something to celebrate after the pandemic. Our company was started by a physical therapist, so it's not a board of investors. She had a vision to open a clinic that was patient-first, interdisciplinary, hands-on, and intense approach. So we have PT, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. Next slide. So another reason to celebrate is we just got CARF accredited. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with CARF. It's similar to like JACO in the hospitals. It's a lot of objectives to meet, but it's an international standard that shows excellence in rehabilitation. And we were honored by getting a 3-year accreditation. So we're super excited and proud of that. And we just received it last month. And so I just wanted to show some pictures because I think it really helps.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, this is Tony Rehan.
I'm sorry, I'm muting somebody.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So this matrix that you see in this picture, it's called a universal exercise unit, and it's actually from Poland. So on the left side of your screen, it says one-on-one intensive approach. So this is a patient that's rehabilitating from a stroke. And so the therapist is hands-on, it's one-on-one. She's got him doing like lat rows, strengthening the muscles that give him good posture and help him to stand upright. On the right hand of the screen is multidisciplinary. So our OTs, our PTs, and our speech, they all collaborate together to help each patient meet the goals that they've set. And so this patient has resistance on his arms, and he also has those blue like parallel lines are actually bungee cords. So it's helping him sit up and get into position that he wouldn't normally be able to attain. So that's one piece of equipment that we really love at our clinic. Next slide, Leanna. On the left-hand side, this is again them using the universal exercise unit. So that patient is resistant in their upper extremities, their arms and their legs, and they're crossing midline. So it's helping to network the different parts of the brain, which then allows them to do higher level activities and reach their goals. And then this patient on the right is how we use it. We call it the spider cage. So they have almost like a weightlifting belt around their waist. And then they have bungee cords that help them to jump, stand. Some patients that can't sit, get in a half kneel position, they can learn to transfer. They can learn all these activities in a super safe environment. Maybe they're coming from a wheelchair or they have a cane, and it's really cool to see them be able to function in this way and be able to learn these new skills. Next slide, Leanna. We also have a partial weight bearing system. So that's on the left side. So it unweights patients, so we can get them almost totally unweighted if they just are getting used to standing. If it's a higher level patient, we can unweight them the majority of their weight, and it will just disallow them from falling so they can learn to skip and run. And then on the right side is a piece of equipment that we love. It's called the RT600. It also has a hoist so it can unweight, and it patterns the legs so that the patient can learn stepping. It also has 12 channels of eStim. So there are electrodes that go on the muscles in the body, and it tells each muscle when to turn off and to turn on. So it literally repatterns them, their brain to walk. It increases their range of motion, their strength, their balance, their visceral function, bone density. It's really, really amazing. And we feel really blessed to have that. At the clinic, usually that's only seen in like major hospital systems. So I know Rehab Institute of Michigan has it, and then Recovery Project has it. We're actually the only clinic that has the pediatric version. So we have the pediatric foot plates. Next slide, Leanna. So these are the conditions that we work with. There are a ton more, but we see a lot of children and adults that are on the spectrum: cerebral palsy, stroke, brain injury, ADD, so attention deficit disorder, a lot of sensory processing disorders, just general developmental delay, toe walking, orthopedic injuries, and many, many more. Next slide. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If anyone works for an agency and wants an in-service, we're happy to do that. Leanna can send information, can also send these slides if anyone's interested.
Thank you so much, both of you, for your presentation. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm going to throw my email in the chat to everybody as well, if that's okay. And then if you want to reach out via email for, any information or anything like that, you can definitely use that information to contact us.
That would be perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, you guys, for your time today.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for all you do.
All right.
Appreciate
Thank you so much.
All right. Anybody else from the public wishing to address the board? Please unmute yourself. One more time for hearing of the public. All right, hearing and seeing none, we will close the first hearing of the public. We will have another opportunity at the end of the meeting for another hearing of the public. Next, we will move on to item 5 minutes. Dave's raising his hand. Dave, go ahead.
We did have somebody unmute themselves. They're calling from 432-499.
Sorry about that.
Hi,
Go ahead.
it's Nate Whitman. Hi, I'm doing myself to some of the people that I have not met yet. I am the director over at Liberties, and Liberties is a drop-in center. It's where we promote wellness, and we engage in different opportunity, give them opportunities to do different things and become, we're working, for instance, on stigma right now. Bear with me, I don't speak too much in public, so I wanted to let you know the standings of Liberties right now. We went through a rough time back in, starting back, and we've come a long, long way. We had problems with theft, and we had to actually borrow money from the county. We're able to repay that money back, and we're very, very really happy of this. We have insurance companies, so we are now able to pay that back So we are so grateful. Thank you for helping us in time of need like that. I'm currently working on a newsletter. Working together right now. I'm working on a newsletter so that we get no one in the area, for the homeless and for the mentally ill, people that have a mentally ill diagnosis. I am also working on getting our staff peer support trained, certified. None of the was certified trained, peer support trained, so I'm working on that also. And because it is a drop-in center, it's my peer support, so that's my main goal, of course, with getting everybody certified. What else can I tell you? The membership has been increasing steadily, which is awesome. We were at one point in time getting a couple members a day. We are now up to 18 members. Our capacity is 26 at our south building, and it is 29 at our north building. And I wanted to make everybody aware that we're open and of some of the things that are happening here at Liberties. So does anybody have any questions? Or I said, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for the update. We really appreciate it.
Your connection broke up pretty bad during your presentation. If you'd like to submit any updates in writing or a copy of your newsletter, be happy to share those with the board. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I thought that was just my computer. So I never know. Anybody else for hearing of the public before I shut it down again and Dave tells me not to? All right, hearing and seeing none, we will close the hearing of the public and we will move on to item 5, minutes. Item A, approval of the minutes of the CMH Full Board meeting held on April 28th, 2021. I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved,
Motion
O'Connell.
to support Phillips.
Motion from Chris, support from Lori. Any comments or questions on the minutes? All right, hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Next is item 6, approval of standing committee meetings, minutes, and recommendations. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Program and Budget Committee meeting held on May 12th, 2021. Take a motion to approve.
So approved, Fantuzzi.
Support Schmidt.
Motion from Ryan, support from Selena. Any board members with questions or comments? All right, hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. All right, next is item 7, request to approve. 4 of these items we looked at program and budget. We can move those separately, together, whatever the board prefers.
Well, I'll move 7A, B, and C and D.
Support Burke.
All right, motion from Nick and support from Megan for items A through D. Are there questions or comments on any of those items? All right, hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Quick note on the committee list. I did update it because Donna wanted to be added to the Legislative Affairs Committee. So I believe that was the only change. Next, thank you for joining us, Donna. Next is item E, which is a new request to approve board resolution from Policy and Legislative Affairs Committee. I'll take a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I'll move to approve. I'm sorry.
Support Bush.
Motion from Nick, support from Linda. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say 2 things. One, the Legislation Policy Committee met last week, worked on this amendment, went back, Sandy cleaned it up for us almost completely well. At Linda's request, I proofread it again very, very closely. All I found were a few typographical punctuation errors. So Sandy, I sent you a copy of that with the corrected punctuation, a couple of commas here and there, a couple of spaces, no substantive changes. The proposal basically is to make clear what has been the position of our board in the past to similar proposals, but to reinforce our opposition to Senator Shirkey's proposal to eliminate the PIHPs and to create a single statewide SIP that would handle all of the Medicaid programs for both physical health and mental health, despite the fact that they don't have any real knowledge as to how to deal with the ancillary services other than the medical model services. We send it out to everybody, not only with the packet, but separately. I don't know if Sandy or anyone else has received any other amendments in case there were some that wanted some language changes or had other ideas. So this would be the time to introduce them. But I think it is important that we go forward and make this, stake out our position as stated in this resolution. You all should have also received from the State Association. Oh, sorry, Sandy, I'll send it again. I thought I saw it. And anyways, were there changes, Phil? Sandy just indicated in the chat there were some changes made between the meeting and now. If there were, I didn't catch them.
The only thing I had were some of the comma changes that you made, and then I asked Sandy to change in the final paragraph of the second line, Speaker of the House. House was not capitalized, so it's kind of near and dear to my heart. So just a capital H, and I'm good.
Okay, it wasn't the copy that I got, so I thought it wasn't the copy I saw. But yeah, this is. Oh, yeah, there it is. It's still not capitalized. There you go. And as I said, I sent you back a couple. Sandy said it wasn't attached. Should have been a separate attachment. I'll send it around again. But it really is not at all substantive. It's simply moving a comma here or removing an extra space there. I ran edit on my Word programmer to catch what my eye didn't catch. What I was going to say is I wanted to remind everybody that you should have received a notice from the State Association asking people to contact their own state senator expressing this point of view. There's a standard type letter, but obviously you can change it all, or email. I'd encourage everyone to do that. Macomb County senators there are only 2 at the moment because there's 1 vacancy, but they are very important to this process. And I think both of them would be most interested in hearing what this board has to say. I know I've already sent mine to Senator Voino, who happens to be my state senator.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, this is.
No, I'm sorry, you need to remain muted until public comment.
Thank you, Dave.
Through Phil to Nick, I have a question.
Go ahead, Linda.
Nick or anyone, there's a term that I can't quite bring to my forefront what it means. The term financial integration, the whole thing talks about integration, and we know what that, or we should know or can know what that is. But what does financial integration mean, Nick?
Well, that's been the debate. It is sort of shorthand terminology, so I'm glad you asked the question. The proposal both the original 298 and the Gordon proposal last time around, started the integration of physical and mental health by integrating at the top, at the funding stream level. We have been arguing, as this resolution does, that it makes more sense to integrate at the service level and let the process of billing it back be handled by a care manager or by whomever, rather than integrating the finances and then just basically reducing the service delivery, because the MIPS, the Michigan Health Plans or the HMOs would have control of all of the dollars and whether or not a person got services or not. It's a shorthand term, but I think the legislators will be well aware of it, because the debate has been between financial integration or service integration.
So it's a common known term. I just didn't know it. Okay, thanks.
Well,
Thanks.
yeah, it's a common known term, I think, among people who are paying attention to this debate closely, like legislators or committee members. But yeah, it's a bit of jargon, and I apologize for that. But I think it's okay in this instance.
So I have a question. I guess it's for Dave. So as soon as this is approved, will these be sent out to everybody in the last paragraph, like immediately?
Yeah, we'll make sure it's all formatted. It'll go out as a PDF on letterhead and with the correct version.
Okay.
Everybody will be copied.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. Any other board members with questions or comments?
Just curious. So no signatures will be affixed. Usually, they have the whole list of signatures, but it doesn't happen with Zoom meetings.
We could list out your names if you'd like, however you would prefer.
I'll defer to Nick or others on how that's best handled.
Yeah, if the letterhead was up to date.
Our letterhead is current. That's the commissioners. The commission does the agenda.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, if it's on a current letterhead, that's probably not problematic, but it wouldn't hurt to list the chair and members of the commission at the bottom under where it says Macomb County Board of Commissioners or Board of Mental Health Commission, whatever it says.
Dave's got it. He knows his orders.
Yeah, whatever.
The name.
Whatever, Dave. Just do whatever, Dave.
Anybody else with questions or comments? All right, we have a motion and support. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Next is item 8, receive and file. We have no items under number 8. Number 9 is resolutions, no items there either. Next is item 10, voucher listings, list of bills for May 26, 2021. I'll take a motion to pay the bills.
So moved, Burke.
Support Schmidt.
Motion from Megan, support from Selena. Any questions or comments on the bills? All right, hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The bills are paid. Next is item 11, management report. We will start with the CFO update, March 2021 financials. I'll start with a motion to receive and file.
So moved, Fantuzzi.
Support, Nick.
Motion from Ryan, support from Nick. Richard, I see you. Go ahead when you're ready.
Sure, get my screen going.
Richard, I'll give you a little lead in here. We have some newer information that Richard is going to cover tonight as part of his report too. So it'll go a little longer than typical, but it's very important information, and we will follow up with information in writing.
Yeah, so to Dave's point, we'll talk about the monthly finance report relatively briefly, and then we're going to jump into the wonderful and exciting topic of standard cost allocation, which has been near and dear to my heart the last 18 months, and I might have a little bit of sarcasm associated with that, but it's definitely important information that the board needs to be aware of where the department's going with our CMH system, and specifically how that's going to impact Macomb County Community Mental Health. But before we jump into standard cost allocation, just some quick highlights on the monthly finance report. So revenue trend continues to stay up compared to prior months. So no significant updates compared to, we did do an update for the February financials in the Program and Budget Committee. So revenue continues to be above prior year month, which is expected due to increase in eligibility and increase in our rates per eligible. So that is normal. In April, you will see another increase as the April payment will include the DCW increase that it covers March through September. Instead of having all of that hit in 1 month, like we've seen in the past, that will be spread over the remaining 6 months of the year. So we will see those revenue increases. In terms of comparisons, cash and investments continues to be high here as of March, about 40 million above where we ended last year. Pretty much all of that increase is due to the increase in the revenue that we've experienced since the beginning of the fiscal year. Vendor payables are down slightly March compared to end of prior year, again, related to the timing of when those payables are received from the providers and booked into the system. Moving to the income statement, the increased revenue is projecting out to result in about 43 million more of revenue in 2021 than we had experienced in 2020. And currently our expenses are relatively consistent to prior year if we project those out. So looking by fund source, we do anticipate with Medicaid and autism combined a surplus of about 31 through March, just under $1 million of Healthy Michigan, and about $2.5 million of state general funds. On track to have a fully funded internal service fund and Medicaid savings at the end of this year. That's the high level of the highlights for the financial report. Is there any questions or concerns before we jump into standard cost allocation? Hearing none, let's jump into standard cost allocation. So this is going to take us a little bit down a trip of memory lane because standard cost allocation is not a new, it's a new term, but it's not necessarily a new concept of what it is and why it exists and why the department is moving us in this direction. So what I want to do is I want to start by talking about a conversation that happened back in 2006. So back in 2006, the state legislature was asking questions about the community mental health system, and they put information, or they put a request for information into the boilerplate budget language. And back then it was section 460, and it had to do with wanting to know how much administration was being spent by community mental health programs compared to how many dollars were making it into services. And this is because the managed care program would have been in existence just a little bit less than 10 years at that point in time. And so there was a lot of growth in the Medicaid program over that period of time, and legislatures wanted to understand, where is this money going? We want to make sure it's being provided to the consumers that are supposed to be receiving the services. So they described this request for information of administration, but they didn't define what administration was. And so what the system did at the time is they put together a work group. It's called the 460 work group. It took almost 2 years, and we tried to define what do we mean when we say administration. Are we talking about administration at the provider level? Are we talking about administration that includes supervisors of clinical staff? Are we talking about administration at the highest level, finance and IT? I mean, what do we mean when we say administration? The result of that was 2 documents. One was the administrative cost report, which was the ultimate report that is required or was required by the CMHs. But the other was a document called Establishing Administrative Costs through the CMH system. And it defined 7 administrative cost categories and gave examples of what those administrative costs were. That include general administration, like the board of directors and the CEO, human resources. It included financial management, so the finance department, billing, claims adjudication. It included IT. It included provider network management. It included quality. It included utilization management, and included customer services. So we had these 7 cost categories that we had to track and report our administration. And what that really did for the system is it took us one step closer to being able to compare ourselves one to another. So the 46 different CMHs within the system. And at the time, that was sufficient. It met the requirement of the boilerplate. We felt good about how those different descriptions or how the different definitions of those categories were presented. And so we were good for almost 10 years. Fast forward to 2014, and we started to regionalize the system. So those that have been around potentially on the board for that period of time would remember that there was an effort to regionalize the then 18 PIHPs down to 10. 3 of them were standalone, which continue today. So Macomb, Oakland, and Detroit Wayne. And then the other 7 are regional entities that are legally separate from their other CMHs. This added a complication to the system because those 7 regional entities were never anticipated when the original definitions for administrative costs were created. And so now we have this situation where a PIHP and a CMH are no longer, in those 7 regions, are no longer the same legal entity. So how do we redefine some of these costs? How do we redefine what's considered administration and what's considered service in that new structure? Unfortunately, around the same time, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services was also going through a restructure. It used to be the Department of Community Health and Human Services separately, and then they were combined. And so this document that really represented these definitions was never updated for this new structure. The CMHs did their best to use this document as a guide of how to define administration, but as a result, 46 different CMHs, 46 different interpretations of those guidelines, we started to drift apart in terms of how we were defining administration. At the time, it was not considered a big deal. The department continued to accept the reporting that we were doing to the department, and they continued to, consider that that was an acceptable format. What really happened to kind of trigger this newfound interest in standard cost allocation took place in 2016 to 2018, where there was a significant cut in the funding of the system, particularly related to Healthy Michigan. And different PIHPs felt that differently. We as a system were in the process of explaining to the department that the issues that we were recognizing was a shortage in funding. So the concerns that we had is that we're not getting enough revenue in the door to cover all of the required expenses of the system. And the department at the time was not understanding why that would be the case. Long story short, we submit all of our services to the department. All of those services have cost attached to that. But those costs attached to those services that we submit are based on old definitions of how we're supposed to submit those costs. And what it was not taking into consideration was any of the service administration or the service related costs that the CMH was bearing on behalf of the larger provider network. And this was true across the entire state. So as a system, we were concerned. We were explaining to the department that we weren't getting enough money. The department was not understanding that concern, so we took that concern to the legislature. The legislature turned to the department and said, "Is this true?" The department said, "No, we believe that they're getting enough funding." And it really all came to a head at the end of the year. So at the end of the year, we do cost reporting. All 46 CMHs report actual cost to the department of what it took to provide services. And as a state, we overspent the revenue received by about $100 million. And that made everybody say, whoa, wait a second, what happened? Why were the CMHs telling us that there wasn't enough money? The department saying, yes, there is enough money. And now we found out, nope, there really wasn't enough money. This required the state legislature to do a supplemental that would cover some of the overspend at certain PIHPs within the system. Lakeshore Regional Entity, Southeast Michigan Partnership, and others. Macomb County was one of them. What that ultimately resulted in was a section of that supplemental from the department to the department from the legislature to do what they called an audit. I don't like the term audit because I'm an auditor, so I know what that's supposed to mean, but an audit of the CMH system to determine why did this happen and how do we avoid it from happening again. Basically, the department needs to be able to understand what's going on, and they need to be able to more timely provide that information to the legislature. The department decided to use that additional money, about $2 million that was appropriated, to hire Milliman to do some surveys and some site visits to CMHs. There was about 20, all CMHs were required to do the survey, Macomb County was included, and there was about 24 site visits that were scheduled across the entire state. About half of those site visits actually occurred. And as a result of those site visits, Milliman came back with basically two major recommendations. Number one major recommendation is we need to get the dollars that are on the encounters that are submitted to the state to be as accurate as possible. And then the second recommendation or observation really was that the current allocation method, the cost allocation method that's used by the CMHs in the system, it is in compliance with federal regulations. It fits within the 2 CFR 200 definitions of how we are allowed to allocate cost, but there are 46 different ways that it's being done within that. And what it's doing is making it difficult to compare CMH to CMH, and it's potentially causing different costs to be submitted on the encounters that is difficult to compare. So based on that recommendation or that observation, the department decided that they wanted to move forward with a standardized cost allocation methodology. So even though everyone was doing cost allocation within the guidelines, they wanted to move towards a common, consistent method that would be used. And they kicked off a work group back in 2019 to achieve that. Over the past year and a half, that work group has met and has now produced recommendations for what that methodology would look like within the system, trying to balance standardization of cost allocation. And again, not standardizing how a CMH operates, not standardizing what the cost of the service ultimately will be, but standardizing the formula that's used. So that in theory, 2 CMHs that run the exact same programs with the same inputs should get the same outputs, right? So that's what we mean by standardized cost allocation. So here we are. It is the middle of 2021. We've finally gotten the finalized standard cost allocation methodology requirements from the state. They are asking us to implement it by October 1 of 2021, which is going to be very painful, but not impossible. As a CMH, we started having conversations that the most recent document came out just at the end of April, so only a few weeks old at this point. We started having conversations with our centralized county finance team, so Steve Schmiegel and Steve Adair from the county. And ultimately it was determined that one solution, or IFIS as it's been called in the past, which is the general ledger system that we use for our tracking of the accounting system, is not going to be able to accommodate the complexities of the new standard cost allocation model. So all of that to say, we are in the process of looking at tools that we would hopefully be able to identify and configure and implement to help us comply with standard cost allocation. So that will look like a new general ledger system that we're going to have to look at, as well as a new payroll HR system, both for the ability to track time in accordance with standard cost allocation, but then also to be able to track other related expenses in accordance with standard cost allocation. So that is the fun that has been standard cost allocation. Definitely wanted you to be aware that this is a new, very important project that we're starting to undertake, and some of the background of why we are where we are and how we got here. So,
Thanks.
any
Ryan.
questions?
Yeah, there's a couple questions. I'll start with Nick and I'll go to Ryan. Nick, go ahead.
Maybe I'm mixing apples and oranges here, but the last time we went through one of these approaches on how the state was going to does this affect the allocation of funds? The last time Millman did this, they ignored huge important things in terms of differences of costs, geographic differences in costs, and differences in the size and the acuity of the population. And Macomb County, Oakland County, I think Detroit, Wayne, and several other places took huge hits in Medicaid dollars. How does this is this anything like that, and should we be concerned about that? Number one, and number two, the justification they're giving for what sounds like to be an extremely more costly mechanism. If you could speak to that.
Yeah, I'll do my best. So to answer the first question about allocation of funds, this will not directly impact what is called our entity-specific risk factor. So in the rate setting process, I don't want to oversimplify it. So Nick, give me a little bit of grace, but there's a pot of money and there is an entity-specific risk factor that helps the state know what portion of that pie, what portion of that pot of money should go to each of the 10 regions. So this will not impact that entity-specific risk factor. What it might do, or what it's supposed to do, is help inform the state on what the actual cost of services are a little bit more consistently. And so it might, hopefully will, impact the total size of that pot. So the hope would be that the total size of the pot would grow in accordance with what the actual cost is that's experienced by the system as a whole. In terms of the second piece of this, so there is some legislative push for this based on that original boilerplate language. Again, we're a couple of years old now, where they wanted to appropriate money for this audit. They wanted some results and recommendations out of that audit. And then there's the expectation that we're moving towards this standardized methodology so that, in theory, the department will be able to more quickly identify and correct any funding issues that might exist within the system. Whether or not this will be effective in achieving that goal is to be seen, I guess.
Do we know how much this is going to cost and who's going to pay for it?
So I don't think we know exactly how much it is going to cost in terms of the system, the statewide system as a whole.
Well, I'm more concerned about PIHP 9.
Most of the cost will be borne at the CMH level because it is really mostly impacts those that direct run services. So
That's the same thing. I mean, CMH, Macomb CMH and PIHP 9 are the same thing. So we are to bear the cost. Do we have any idea of what additional cost this will have to implement the new system? And I think I heard you say there are efforts afoot to urge the legislature to handle that cost. And which pot of money does it come out of? Medicaid, general fund, et cetera.
So at this point, we're just now starting to research what options we have as Region 9 to procure the systems that we need, right? To identify which systems will meet these needs and how we would handle those. At this point in time, I do anticipate that it would fit within the revenue budget that we do have currently. And we would still be able to fully fund the ISF and Medicaid savings. But if I had to take a very wild guess, I've done probably about a dozen general ledger and payroll implementations throughout the state at different CMHs. And it can take anywhere from $300,000 or $400,000 up to $1.5 million to purchase the software and implement the system. So it's definitely not a small expenditure, but luckily, at least for this year, we do have the budget to support that. So.
Which pot of money?
It would be split. It would be split mostly Medicaid and Healthy Michigan. So it'll follow our funding splits. So mostly Medicaid, Healthy Michigan, a little bit of GI.
Thanks, Nick. Ryan, and then Megan.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Richard, for explaining this in a way that is really complicated. The concept is complicated, but you really simplified it for us. My question is, first, I want to make sure I understand the problem right, and it's for the rest of the board too. So just on base, the definition of administrative costs historically meant something different. When the PIHPs consolidated down to 10, and there were many different, I think you said 46 different ways of how we were doing things. And so the department said, hey, we want everything standardized. Oh, and we needed to be standardized by October 1st of this year. I know I jumped over a lot. Is that kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this started about, as of October, this will have been about 2 years since the department's made the decision. So it's been about 2 years in the making. But yes.
So, but we are required to adopt the standard cost allocation by October 1st of this year. New payroll software, new HR system. Two questions. One, how can we assure the department that we are consistent with everyone else? Then second, what's the consequences if we're not considered standardized? What are the consequences? So first, how do we know, and what are the consequences, if any?
So there is a document, and we can definitely share some of the information, but there is a document that the department has issued that identifies what cost centers that are minimally required to be used by a CMH. We are allowed to have more cost centers than that, but if we do, we have to show how we roll up our cost centers into those cost centers. So it has to be mapped. We have to be able to map. And realistically, that's where our struggle is today. Our current cost centers, or we call them orgs within the One Solution system, do not map directly to those standard required cost centers. And so we're going to have to recreate all of them pretty much from scratch. So new chart of accounts that we're going to have to develop. So our intent would be to develop a chart of accounts that we will then be able to show the department this account maps to this standard cost center that you're requiring. So that's how we will show compliance. In terms of what happens if we don't comply, what will happen from my perspective is that we will have 3 reports that we're required to do each year. They're called the Ecui Reports. So it's the Encounter Quality Initiative reports that we're required to submit. The dollars that we put on that report are required to be in accordance with standard cost allocation. So we actually report how many dollars we spend by individual service code. So we have to be able to state that we did that in compliance. And then I expect our compliance exam auditors will be testing that document to verify that we are in compliance. And if we're not found to be in compliance, I don't know that there's currently wording in our contract that says what the ramifications will be, but we will not be in compliance with our contract. So.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Ryan. Megan, and then Donna.
Thank you so much, Richard. I agree with Ryan. You made it like an interesting story. I was into the history of it. So thank you for that explanation. But also, I was just curious, when they did the whole review, and when it got narrowed down to 10, is there anybody in particular, and you don't have to say, you know, which PIHP if there was, but was there any one that was doing it just absolutely fabulous that we based it off of, that like you'd be able to get that information to reach out and see maybe what kind of software they use or anything? Was there like one group that was just doing awesome?
So at the end of the day, the standard cost allocation work group that has been working over the last almost 2 years is made up of 10 CFOs from across the state at different CMHs and PIHPs, as well as representatives from MDHHS and Millen. And so what we did is we did demo a lot of different options of what are people currently doing. And we tried to pick something that was not going to be too different from most CMHs in the state. To be frank, Macomb County has been a little bit further away from the middle of the pack related to cost allocation because of some of the limitations that we have with the county's current general ledger system. And so it is a bigger change for us than most CMHs. So that's part of the answer. The other part of the answer is luckily I do work with quite a few of the other CMHs in the state. And there is a system, a Microsoft Dynamics based system that most CMHs use. About 90% of the CMHs in the state currently use that system. And we do know that it works with the PCE system that we already use. So there's already data integrations that have been built for those systems to talk to one another. So our hope, if we can make it happen, would be to pick a system that we know that other CMHs are already using, and then model to the extent we can after that, so that we'll be ahead of the curve. We won't be building this from scratch.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Megan. Donna, and then Selena.
I think probably the question I had was the same one that Megan just asked. I was wondering if they wanted us to basically across the state use the very same payroll system and the very same HR system. You know, if you had any ideas of what those systems were. And I think basically it was just to dovetail right off of what Megan had the same. I had the same question.
Sure.
I think you basically answered it.
Yeah, I mean,
just want to expound on that.
Yeah, to the part of the question about the same system, the answer is no. We intentionally discussed standard cost allocation that the goal, right, is to move towards standardization, but we can't create cookie cutter CMHs. Every CMH is built to support their own community. And as such, every CMH has to have some level of flexibility on how programs are designed, how costs are captured. But the idea being that those costs need to be captured in such a way that it can be fed into a standardized formula to get to ultimately what we're looking for, a cost per service. So no, I guess to summarize the answer, we can use whatever system we find is best for us. I just expect that we will find that rather than recreating the wheel, we'll be able to find a system that others already use that will work for us. That's our hope. Building
a new payroll system is, from my understanding, really a big endeavor. Wouldn't that be a really time-consuming endeavor?
It is, absolutely. Of course, it always comes down to how complex of the reporting is that we need that system to be able to do. And as I've alluded to, this is complex reporting and requirements. So again, our hope is to find a system and a setup maybe that other CMHs have already used that we would be able to replicate, that would reduce the amount of time to get that set up. But at the basic level, that will be the biggest lift because our employees are unique. The way that we structure our programs are unique, and so we need a system that's able to handle that accordingly.
So would those checks still go through the county, or would they go through CMH, or, I mean, would the county still be working through those systems, or haven't you worked that out yet?
So we just started having these conversations in the last week or so. So there are additional conversations that need to be had with the treasurer's office, with county finance on how we would even get from where we are to where we need to be. And so there's a couple of different options that we've been talking about. But my understanding is it would still be a county managed banking system that would still have to happen under the control of the treasurer. So that would still be important. And then whether or not our payroll system would likely be the one that would be calculating the payroll amounts. So we would have to make sure and be sure that our system is calculating payroll exactly the same way that the county system is calculating payroll, right? Because we're not changing anything else. It's just the system that's doing the work.
Well, that's complicated. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Selena?
Richard, you mentioned that we were not necessarily in the middle of the pack due to our constraint by what the county was using, their ledger system. When we move into something new, how are we going to be able to manage it? Or is the county then going to have to adjust their system to incorporate whatever systems that we're going to have to go through? Are we still going to be stuck because of what they're using?
So with new systems, we'll need new policies and procedures to make sure that those fit with those systems. So that will be part of the conversation. It is my understanding that we will have the primary responsibility to manage those processes. So for example, generating EFT payments and cutting checks, that will be something that we will have to be able to do with our system.
Okay. So this is something that we're going to have to work closely with the Board of Commissioners on, because they're going to have to be a little bit flexible with us because we're going to have requirements from the state put upon us.
Yeah, so at a very high level, we've already started some of those conversations. And one of the examples that was used that we're hoping to be able to kind of emulate is how the roads currently work within the county. So they run their own system of payroll and accounts payable. And then every month we would generate, they generate a report that's put into the county system so that the county can run financials for the Board of Commissioners. So in theory, if we had our own system, every month I will be able to produce a financial statement for this board, just like I do now. But at the same time, and with the same data, produce a journal entry or a report that would get uploaded into the county system so that the Board of Commissioners can still see a full financial statement that includes our information. But all of the day-to-day processing would happen in our own system.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Selena. Richard, I have a question. Every time this happens at the Board of Commissioners too, whenever we get a new system, we get a new software, there's always tons of costs involved. And you threw out some dollar amounts. And are those dollar amounts, are these systems where you pay for it up front and you're good? Or is this you pay for it up front and then every year annually you have to pay a certain amount, whether it be a quarter or a half, whatever it may be? Do you have any idea if that's coming or what kind of system it would be?
Well, so it depends on what system we find that we would choose. There are two different options. One would be an on-premise solution, which is more of the traditional, you purchase the software up front. It's probably a maintenance agreement that you do have to do ongoing. And then again, support if there's any issues with that system. The other options that are out there now are software as a service or cloud-based softwares. There are definitely advantages to those. We have to make sure that they're HIPAA compliant and security compliant for us, of course. And so, you know, we will have to, each one has their own financial implications, right? Some are more front loaded in terms of cost with smaller ongoing, and some are more of a less on the front end, but more of a ongoing annual subscription cost. So we're gonna have to evaluate both, and whatever we would bring forward, of course, to the board, we would have a financial evaluation around the current and ongoing cost.
Got it. Thank you, Richard. Are there any other board members with questions or comments? I don't see anyone. I don't hear anyone. All right. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate the report. And if the Board of Commissioners can help, let me know.
No, I think Dave had his hand up.
Dave, do you have your hand up?
Just to piggyback a little bit on Richard's comments, and thank you, Richard, for all that detail. Hopefully you got the timelines and the sense of urgency out of that. I have been in conversation with the Office of the County Executive, the Finance Department at the county, and purchasing at the county to see what our options are to use the RFPs from other governmental entities, or to do a sole source, given the high degree of specialization. So I'm waiting to hear back on those. But just kind of a heads up to the board here, we might need some expedited activity, perhaps even outside of a board meeting, on these purchase agreements and the purchasing process on this going forward. We are trying to explore the options as quickly as possible, nail down the preferred system for both the payroll and the general ledger, and to move those forward as quickly as possible, because it's really tight. And Richard, I had to mute myself and you for a second there, but did you mention the HR payroll system? We're looking at a January implementation.
Yeah, I think our recommendation, I don't know that I specifically mentioned that, Dave, but yeah, our recommendation, as with normal payroll implementations, is to try to match it up with a calendar year. And so to Ryan's previous question, we'll probably ask for forgiveness for that 3-month delay, and hopefully get that forgiveness from the department. So.
Thank you.
Megan, do you have another question?
I do. I'll make it so quick. Better forgiveness sometimes than permission. But just really quick, this again is just a move forward basis. You guys don't have to go back in and backdate it like to January 1 or anything, right? It's just going to be moving forward from October on.
Correct. Starting October 1st, we're supposed to be gathering the data in the format necessary to comply. So we don't have to redo historical.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other board members? All right, we had a motion and support to receive and file Richard's report. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Next is item 11B, CEO update. I'll take a motion to receive and file Dave's update.
So moved, O'Connell.
Support Philip.
Motion from Chris, support from Lori Kinjemi. Dave, go ahead.
I will be brief this evening. The board resolution really addresses the advocacy efforts against the gearing towards integration, the Shirky proposal, and the Representative Whiteford's proposal, which is to have a single PIHP across the state of Michigan. So we're being attacked on two different fronts. We're watching that closely. And again, Alan Bolter from the association will be out to speak to the Program and Budget Committee. And we'll have all the most recent updates at that time. As I get information, I will share with the board here. And I did, it came up in the state meeting that a number of other county boards of commissioners were also doing a resolution. So I did share that with Phil and Commissioner Wallace as well. That's the big news. This standard cost allocation has definitely been a priority since the last time we met. And yeah, there's a lot of activity going on. I will continue to, like I said, to do the emails. We had the board orientation this morning. So again, if there's questions at any time, reach out because it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose, as they say right now. And happy to answer questions at any time. So I'll leave it at the system redesign issues, and then internally here with the standard cost allocation are the big two things on our radar right now. But there's lots of things on the radar. So I'll be brief since we do have some other presentations this evening. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Any questions or comments for Dave from board members? All right, hearing and seeing none, we have a motion and support to receive and file. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Report is received and filed. Next, item 12, other possible agenda items. Item A, provider presentation from Flourishing Lives. Sheena Patel, the Director of Occupational Therapy, would like to give a presentation. I'll take a motion to receive and file.
So moved, Bush.
Oh, support, Burke.
Motion from Linda, support from Megan. Is Sheena?
Hey, I was wondering if I could present my screen, if that would be all right.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Just give me and is everyone able to see my screen right now?
It's coming up.
Okay. Might take a second to load, I apologize. Okay.
We can see your slide.
Oops, and it's at the end, so that's a great way to start.
You're welcome.
Okay, so as mentioned, my name is Sheena Patel. I'm the Director of Occupational Therapy at Flourishing Lives. I'm going to start off by thanking everyone for this opportunity to speak to you guys about what it is that we do and how we serve our community. I also want to let you know I'm a fast talker. I have a lot of content to go through, so if I'm speeding through this, please feel free to tell me to slow down. I just want to make sure I'm in the allotted 10-minute time frame, so I apologize for that. As some of you may know, our previous owner, Sandy Glovac, has retired from Sensory Systems Clinic, and as such, we needed to change our name to Flourishing Lives, and we wanted to take a moment to thank Christina Mosella and Daniel Gorney, as well as the board, for making this approval so quick. It was our priority to maintain services without any interruption, and we were able to do so with your support and guidance, so we really appreciate everything that you guys did for our company. In terms of what we do, we are an outpatient occupational therapy clinic, and we serve individuals in between the ages of 0 to 21 and 22 and older. We address areas of sensory processing disorder, which can affect their ability to engage in community environments, self-care tasks, including bathing, washing, dressing, and grooming, difficulties at attention, which specifically affects their ability to participate in school and extracurricular activities, all areas of mental health, including anxiety and depression, gross motor skills, difficulties with that, which is balance, coordination, fine motor skills, including handwriting skills, difficulty with socializing with their parents or other peers in the environment, and any individual that has a history of trauma. In the areas of adults, the biggest differences is that we address individuals that have difficulties completing everyday work tasks, higher executive functioning skills like attention, memory, retention, all of those areas we can still address, as well as physical ailments. Our clinic has 6 separate sensory gyms and 2 evaluation or modality rooms. In this slide, you can see this is what our typical evaluation room looks like. We try to do our evaluations in an ideal environment, which basically means that we limit all auditory sounds, we limit visual distractions, things of that nature, and we really address underlying sensory components. Then we transition to our treatment rooms. Now in this image, this is one of our larger sensory gyms. Every gym that we have has a minimum of 3 suspension hooks, which allows for a lot of variability in every session. We want the child to enter the session and have it be a novel experience, so they're adapting and they're working on their problem-solving skills when they're transitioning. In this particular room, we have 17 suspensions in this one, so we can do a lot of different variations in the room. Each room will have a unique feature, whether it's a zip line, a rack wall, ball pits. We have something called an oscillator, which is a table that kind of shakes in a linear format, and it helps with regulation when they're doing things like such as fine motor tasks for their buttons and their zippers. It helps regulate them when they're really stressing out about these tasks. The reason that we do all these unique features and unique treatment rooms is that we really want the child to explore and expand their play. We don't want that to be limited at all. We are very much child-directed, therapist redirected, which means that the child begins a task and the therapist is going to provide a higher level of challenge, and that creates the just right challenge for the child. So they're not being pushed too hard, but they're not just kind of staying in their own realm or their own niche of what they're comfortable with. Our goal is to increase internal motivation, self-esteem, and problem solving. By doing this, we can create trust and comfort and really empower the child to grow. One of the other unique features that we really pride ourselves in is we really try to incorporate the families in general. We want them to participate. We welcome them to go on all of our pieces of equipment. If they don't want to go on a swing, we have them observe and just kind of walk them through why we're doing what we're doing and how they can engage in that in their home environment. We also specialize in trauma and attachment-based therapy. All of our therapists are trained in this area. This intervention process helps build bonds between the parent and the child. It can also help with co-regulation. Some of you may know this already, but I'm just going to go through it really quickly. Co-regulation is really an interactive process between the parent and the child, which helps the child learn how to self-regulate by mirroring their parent's regulation. So by having the parent participate, they're co-regulating in that process. We train all of our families on how to meet the child at their level and modify the activities to promote regulation using sensory-based strategies, facial expressions, and regulating activities such as heavy work. This is an image of our smaller treatment room. So this is the final 3 of the 6 rooms that I had mentioned earlier. The smaller rooms are meant to just kind of isolate certain sensory systems or just to provide a safe space for if a child is feeling overwhelmed in a larger environment. Other treatments that we offer is feeding therapy. As you can see, our little guy is trying to cut using utensils on the left-hand side. The middle image is our modalities room where we perform myofascial releases, cranial sacral therapy. We can assess reflex integration and engage in activities that can promote the integration of those reflexes. And on the far right, we have something called Interactive Metronome, which is a computer-based program that any individual can use to improve their higher level of function. So we were asked to touch a little bit about COVID-19 and what it looked like before to what it is currently. And so prior to COVID-19, we really tried to cultivate a safe environment for children to interact with one another. They were able to transition from one room to another, ask peers if they can, utilize equipment from one room to the next. And parents were able to interact with each other and kind of provide strategies and solutions to situations that they were having in their regular home. After COVID, we went from socialization to isolation. So where we used to be able to have kids closely interacting and teaching each other how to make things like slime, now we're having to teach them. So one of the things that we really tried to do was have the therapist interact the child and get on their level. So if a kid is creating an obstacle course, The therapist is then going to have to go through the whole entire obstacle course, and we really got to learn where our underlying concerns were, whether it was balance or coordination. Couldn't tell you how many times I've fallen on a mat, but we wanted to allow them that opportunity to mirror our good coordination skills if we had those. So it was very important to try to do that, as they're really lacking in that socialization component. Changes that we've had to make, some of which are very familiar, I'm sure, to everyone, is that everyone needed to wear their masks and take the temperature, but we had to start our day at 8 a.m. assigning one room to each gym. So we can only treat 6 patients at a time right now, so 6 therapists at a time. And we were trying to limit how many family members could be present during the session. And that really limits the child feeling safe and having that whole holistic approach. But what we have been able to do is allow at least one family member to participate. If they're unable to attend our sessions, we're using walkie-talkies so the parent can be like, hey mom, like I'm on the zip line, and, you know, kind of touch base with them and make sure that they're engaging as best as we can. We are also using telehealth. We've kind of had to learn and navigate that whole realm. Right now we're using Doxy.me, but this kind of helped us too, because we got a glimpse into the family's like natural environment, and we got to use our clinical creative skills to kind of figure out, okay, well, you may not have a zip line, but maybe you can do some trampoline work, or maybe we can try to modify an activity outdoors. So we were really able to kind of get to experience what the parent goes through when they're transitioning from the clinic environment to the home environment. We are currently taking surveys from all of our families to see if they are comfortable with peer interaction, and we are slowly starting to reintroduce some social interactions as appropriate to maintain the health and safety of all of our families. In closing, you know, our ultimate goal is to help children and their families thrive in all aspects of their life. We do this by collaborating with the client, the parents, the therapy team, and we really reach out to other professionals, whether it's teachers, to promote that generalization component, and making sure that we're all in this together and we're also providing that support for that family member. We really find value in what is meaningful for our clients, and we try to advocate so that way they can receive all their services. And we really appreciate all that you do to help us achieve that goal. We want to make every child feel confident and successful in everyday life. And so that is it. I want to say thank you so much. At the end of the slide, there's our email if you have any questions, our website, and a phone contact in case you wanted to call us directly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sheena, for the presentation. Any board members have any questions, comments for Sheena? I don't hear any. I don't see any. I see some thumbs up, some claps. Thank you, Sheena. Thank you for coming.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, with that, we have a motion and support to receive and file. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Presentation is received and filed. 2 reminders. We have Program and Budget Committee meeting Wednesday, June 9th at 6 p.m. and full board for June will be the 23rd at 6 p.m. Are there any other board members that had any comments, any additions? All right. Hearing none, we will move on to the hearing of the public. Anybody from the public wishing to speak? Again, you have 5 minutes. Give us your name and address, unmute yourself, and we will go from there. I see Sean McGregor raising his hand. Sean, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Just here to give you the CEO update. CEO has had a surge of persons served return to attending in person. Many guardians and homes are feeling safer for their loved ones to return due to the new COVID-19 orders to be enacted June 1st and July 1st. And due to a vast majority of our persons served and staff that are fully vaccinated, our CEO locations have started prepping their gardens and flower beds for the summer to come. Due to the nicer weather as well, we have increased our community inclusion, visiting more shops, nurseries, parks, cider mills, and everyone's very excited. As well, our volunteer sites continue to expand, and we have added more Meals on Wheels routes as well. CEO has also recently secured paid piecework with Verbatile Company. The person served response has been very positive, and they're very interested in doing the piecework, and the company itself is very happy for CEO to be able to pick up some of their staff shortages in the manufacturing process. Lastly, CEO and I as well would like to wish everybody a safe and happy Memorial Day as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for the update. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak? Anyone else from the public going twice? Third and final call for hearing of the public. Dave, am I missing anybody?
You look good, sir.
All right, we will close the hearing of the public and I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support, Burke.
Motion from Nick, support from Megan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We are adjourned. Have a good